Greetings, I am Marsha Hines-Lane. It is a pleasure to be back on the Refocusing Barbados platform. I wanted to pass through today to give my perspectives on the debates that we're having in education. Everybody knows that education is one of the issues that I am closely associated with and that I closely watch. And I thought that it would be remiss of me not to pass through the Refocus Barbados stage to give some comments and reflections on the issue of education in Barbados. I don't want anybody to forget the context of where this debate started. Prior to the last election in Barbados, we had a political party that gave the commitment, that gave its commitment, that gave a national commitment to the protection of free education at the point of delivery for citizens of Barbados. At that time, the party would have spent 5 years in office. They would have been able to do projections based on what had happened in their 5-year term, and they would have should have also been able to look at the economic climate in the world and make their decisions about what it is they wanted to put as agenda items on the national platform. Having done all of that, they promised Barbadians that education would remain free at the point of delivery. The government was returned to office, and that promise changed shortly afterward with the introduction of tuition fees at the point of delivery for students enrolled in the University of the West Indies. We have no idea, we have not been told how much further the policy will extend into the educational sector. We understand that there are some fee increases at the Samuel Jackman Prescott Polytechnic. We're waiting to see what plays out at the Barbados Community College as well as in secondary and primary schools across the island. While I understand that we have to have a debate about how we are going to continue to provide education for our citizens, I don't want us to lose the fact. I don't want us to lose the context in which this debate is happening. If a government builds a platform on 5 items, the government wins its mandate on 5 items. I believe that if the mandate is changed, and changed to the point where Barbadians cannot recognize the things that are being done vis-a-vis what was promised, the government no longer has mandate. And I think that that is one of the fundamental issues that we cannot lose sight of in the education debate. In terms of the sector itself, though, there is a fundamental issue that I haven't heard a lot of discussion on, and I want to place it at the forefront as well of the debate along with the context. When the nationalist period in Barbados played out, from the 1930s down until 1966 independence, I believe that the forefathers, the craftsmen of independence at that time, saw education as something that they could do as opposed to changing or redistributing wealth across the island. So as opposed to taking a more confrontational approach, as say some leaders in South Africa have done, our forefathers decided to give each Barbadian an equal opportunity to education, as opposed to redistribute wealth and land that was already in the hands of whomever it was in the hands of. But they created the platform for Barbadians to work hard, to work honestly, and to use education as something that they could then build houses from, buy cars from, increase their lot from. We cannot take away education from Barbadians and not place the discussion about the redistribution of wealth then on the table. Because if you are taking away the entitlement that was given to Barbadians so that they don't worry about the redistribution of wealth, then it is unfair to take it back without having the wider discussion. So I also want to put that issue on the table. Education has been associated in Barbados for a long time with pride. It has been associated with hard work. It has been associated with honest work. It is a part of the fabric of what Barbados is. And as we are having this debate, I hear a lot of economic arguments playing out, but I don't hear the socially related arguments about education and about the removal of education. The educational sector has become a battleground. Minister versus teacher, principal versus management staff, and more recently, Prime Minister versus principal of the University of the West Indies. And I am as convinced now as I was 3 months ago, as I was when I first started the Refocusing Barbados stage, that we are an island in crisis. The education sector, the University of West Indies in particular, was a manifestation of who we were as a people and as the Caribbean. It was one of the important and critical pillars upon which we built our independence. And it will continue to be one of the important pillars for us to continue to define ourselves, not only as Barbadians, but as Caribbean people, indeed, as citizens of the world. So to hear the public discussion, the public acrimony between the Prime Minister of Barbados and the principal of the University of the West Indies is disheartening. It is disheartening at a philosophical level. It is clear that we have a crisis of who we want to be, of where we want to be, and of who we are. And it is playing out with education as a metaphor. I am convinced that the people of Barbados have to not only watch the videos on Refocusing Barbados, we have to reach the critical mass where we say enough is enough. We have to start being craftsmen of the fate which we want to leave not only for ourselves, but more importantly for our children. We have to take the discussions in education and we have to be able to ground them in the historical context and in the social context. We have to be able to claim this issue and not just say, I have enough money to send my child. I know how my son can get there. Because if your son gets there, but there are 10,000 other sons in this country who can't get there, we're going to see the continued increase in the crime and the destabilization of the country. And we are watching it play out. Barbados, I've said it already and I've said it again. The change that we are looking for is within us. We have to become concerned enough. We have to get up and make the changes that we want. We have to start to analyze and we have to start to ask ourselves, are we going to continue to hold on to systems and individuals who have clearly lost their way and the way that we are supposed to be going in this country? We have to tell ourselves, enough is enough. We have to work backward in our educational sector, in our health sector, in our environment, to make sure that this island does not slide further into the morass in which it now finds itself. It's been my pleasure, and I hope that as we continue to bring you the issues at Refocusing Barbados, we touch you and we find a way to make you say it is time to become involved.
Hello, this is Mac once again, and coming from Refocusing Barbados. Today, I want to add to some of the comments that Marsha made on education, but I want to look at it from the perspective of leadership. And I think, even though I agree with Marsha, that we need to understand the context within which we should educate our people, yet still I am of the firm belief that that context cannot be clearly understood with the type of leadership that we have. and leadership that is sadly lacking. Because I believe, and I will say that the biggest problem of education today is the Minister of Education. That is the biggest problem. I think the mind of the minister is not in the right place, and that creates a big, big problem. But I think the minister suffers from a diminished mind. And I don't think it's possible for it to shrink anymore. And you look at some of the things that he has done and some of the things that he has said, and you would realize, look, this guy has a serious problem. This guy doesn't understand his role. For one, he's always in conflict with his teachers. He has to work with them, but he chooses to bash them. Therefore, how could there be any success in education? And this has been going on now for 7 years. That is a serious problem. He needs to look at himself and to assess himself. And someone needs to really talk with this gentleman and get him to understand what his role ought to be. His role must not be confrontational. And what I saw playing out recently really saddens me. When the teachers wanted, and I said this before, I'm going to say it again, when the teachers wanted the discussion on their role in relation to correcting SBAs, he did something which I consider to have been extremely awful and very poor for a man who's supposed to be at the level of the Minister of Education. He put the parents against the teachers. That is what, in effect, what he did. The teachers were saying, look, we got a problem here with this SBA. We've been talking about this for quite a while. We want this solved. We need to get this solved before we go forward. And in fact, what the minister did is say, you parents, they're here talking about correcting SBAs and they don't want to do it. What about all when the little children know that they're troubling? That is what the minister did. And it shows the kind of mind and attitude of a person who is really not responsible. And could we afford to have a Minister of Education like that? He should have been fired immediately. But the Prime Minister cussed Hillary Rebecca. So, can he fire the Minister of Education? Neither the Minister of Finance, the Minister of Education, nor the Prime Minister understand the context within which they function. None of them understand that context. And the context within which they function is within the context of 300 years of slavery and a group of people in the 60s saying, listen, this has to stop. We have to find a way to extricate our people out of the social mess and economic depravity that they find themselves in. And they use education as the platform. How could they then decide to dismantle that platform upon which we have made a lot of successful black people in this country? And our businesses continue to function because of the level of our education. And I said it since last year, I've been saying it, and I'll continue to say it. We have been set back over 20 years by this poor policy on the part of the government. This will produce nothing. The minister seems to be always in campaign mode. And that is so bad. He needs to engage his teachers. He needs to engage them. And I don't understand why he has a problem engaging them. How could the Prime Minister choose one of the poorest minds to supervise and important ministry, like the Ministry of Education, the most important ministry in the country. The livelihoods of our people and the future of this country rests on education. Why would you choose a mind like that to supervise education? He is arrogant, he is petty, and ill-prepared for such an important role. And the only thing could have ensued from all of this was chaos. But there's something else I think we need to look at. Apart from the minister's folly, I don't think we should spend much time on the minister's folly. Dismiss him for what he is. Our education system needs to do something that's big, new, and bold. It may not be new, but I remember visiting other islands, interacting with other Caribbean brothers and sisters, and hearing certain surnames. And when I hear those surnames, I would say to them, you got Bajan in your blood. And they would say, well, my great-grandfather came to St. Lucia or Antigua or St. Vincent in the 40s or the 50s. And when we found out, a lot of them had important roles in these islands. Some went as teachers, a lot of them went as teachers, a lot of them went as policemen. They went into the civil service and became leaders of the civil service because our education system was at a superior level. We have to look at that model again. We have to revisit it. We have to produce a first-class citizen. It must be a first-world citizen prepared for the first world in a developing nation. And we need to bring in the best minds and the brightest minds and say to them, look, prepare our people and start to export our brains. Send our people in the wider world. We are going to have a problem very soon because we cannot find jobs for all of these people. Let them go into the world. You see, and the problem is, not every one of us who have the ability to go to Europe or North America to have an education. We still rely on UE. So UE is important for the future of this country. We cannot defund UE. We have to continue. And I agree with Ms. Motley when she says she will fund UE. I support Ms. Motley on this. I agree with it. We have to look at UE as being important. It is not inimical to our interests. We cannot see it as an expense. It is not an expense. But we have to see UE as being very important to the future of our country. And when you have poor people who are unable to educate their children at that level, you know you have a problem. They look forward to this. There needs to be a vision for education and this country. But it's sad to say I don't see the vision coming out of this government. I'll be very, very honest. And we have to be careful how we go forward. We got to prepare our people thoroughly in the various disciplines and let them take on the world. We can do it. But there must be that self-belief, and we must have people who can supervise this and who are capable of doing it. Another thing, the Barbados Water Authority is doing is carrying out some installation of the mains between the exchange and layers area. And the people are doing a very good job. And they work, men and women for infra, they work late into the night to make sure that this job is done. And I wish the government can take a leaf out of their book and at the level of supervision, how these men can go about their jobs and get it done successfully. And I witnessed something last week which was really, really awful. Those men were out there in front of the bakery, and they were trying to clear the road. The traffic was held up a bit, but as the ZR vans and as the minibuses passed, they abused those men in the worst way. What happened to us? This is an important function. And I cannot believe that we would decide that to be so abusive to these men. And they're doing a very great work, a very wonderful job. And I don't understand how we could reach this level where we see these people as a problem. They are not a problem. And it's time that we people really sit down and start to think. And that's one of the problems that we have with our people. We are not thinking. And that's why the politicians do so well. When people stop thinking, politicians do well, because that's the kind of environment politicians love. And that's all for today, folks. This has been Refocusing Barbados, and I'm Mark.